Welcome to Virtually Amazing, the podcast for virtual assistants with me, Shelley Fishel of Tomorrow's VA and Joe Brianti of JLP Business Consulting. Each week we chat with amazing guest experts, all aimed at helping you grow your VA business. So sit back, grab a cuppa and tune in for a fun-filled episode. Welcome listeners to this week's episode of Virtually Amazing, the podcast. And we are back again. We are recording today on the 14th of September. Oh my goodness, the 14th of September. I'll tell you what that means in a minute, Joe. But yes, so we're recording this on the 14th of September and it's going to go out, I think it's the 27th of September, something like that. Mm-hmm. So whatever we talk about may well have happened by the time you listen to this episode, but that's online live for you, isn't it? Yeah. So Joe, how are you today? Because we did two episodes yesterday. So anything new to report?
No. Well, the weather. We had a reasonable day yesterday. I don't know what time in the middle of the night it started raining, but it hasn't stopped yet.
Oh my goodness.
And it is cold. So I think we can officially draw a line under the UK summer, that blip that we had of, sunshine. But yeah, no, life is good and all very positive in this house today.
Excellent. Yes.
How about you?
Yeah, it's quite good today. I mean, as I was just telling you before we came on air, I've had a car battery malfunction this morning. Went off to an early appointment somewhere in town, parked the car beautifully in a great spot, came back to the car and there's the dodo. So my husband is currently, as we speak, meeting the battery replacement person called Stefan, who's going to change the battery and relieve us of a few shekels, I'm sure. So, but that is, in fact, I think he's just come back. Anyway, so hopefully the car is now or will be working. So that's been my fun this morning. And also then I suddenly realized that I'm delivering a webinar this evening at 7 o'clock for me, my time, 6 o'clock Central European time. So that's 5 p.m. in the UK. A 2-hour webinar on Excel. And I delivered the last one in July. So I haven't looked at it since July. And even though I know the content and I could probably do it with my eyes shut, I always like to look through the notes, look through my slides, look through my plan, and just make sure so that I cleaned down my demo file beforehand, because there's nothing worse than saying this, it's all been filled in. So I come to say, this is how you do a pivot table and it's already there. So yes, I just spent 10 minutes or so just kind of reacquainting myself with that. But it's really good because I'm sure you have situations like this, that when you know something so well and you've put something together so well, actually don't have to do quite so much re-prep work as I used to. If for the first time I'm delivering this webinar, I would probably spend a couple of days getting myself in the zone, figuring out if my order's correct, rehearsing it, and making sure it fits the time allocated. But because I know it does, it's much easier now. So that's good. So just what I didn't realize, the 14th of September was my mum's birthday. And she passed away in 1984. And she was just 50. So it's just suddenly that I looked at the date on my computer monitor and it kind of said, it's an auspicious date. Yes. So there we go. But anyway, so today we're going to be talking to the lovely Juliet Landau-Pope, who is fantastic at helping you get things done. Procrastination is one of her topics, and decluttering is another of her topics, and helping kids revise for exams, or anybody really that needs to get things done, is another of her topics. So we're going to have a wide-ranging chat with Juliet in just a couple of minutes, I think. Unless there's anything else you want to talk about before we go and get her.
Let me procrastinate about that for a moment. Maybe Juliet can tell us how we avoid that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this interview. So let's go get Juliet and we'll see you again in just a minute. Welcome back, listeners. And we have now been joined by the wonderful Juliet Landau-Pope, who I've known on and off for quite a while. I think I met you through Anna Archie, who's also been a guest on the podcast, funnily enough. So I remember you gave a talk once in Anne's fitness studio that I came to. It was quite a while ago.
That was a while ago, yes.
It was quite a long time ago. So welcome to the podcast, Juliet, and meet Joe. Joe is my, I was going to say my right-hand man, but it's my left, right, I don't know, lost on the podcast. And we're looking forward to having a really lovely chat with you today about procrastination, because we're all, our audience, virtual assistants, are all busy business owners, possibly mums or carers. They'll have another life apart from their support life. And we all struggle with getting everything done and prioritizing and all of that. So I'm really looking forward to hearing what tips you can share with our audience to help them with that. But before we get into all of that, let's find out a bit more about you and you know, like who you are, how did you start and how did you get into this and all that kind of stuff.
Great. Well, procrastination is a word that I didn't even know existed when I was, you know, first experiencing it as a student, as a teenager. It wasn't even part of my vocabulary. Nobody talked about things like that in those days. But I started out as an academic. I started out as a university lecturer, and I taught at the Open University for many years. The OU is the most amazing institution. You probably know people come from all sorts of backgrounds. They haven't necessarily followed the sort of traditional, you know, educational career path. And so I taught social sciences at the OU, but my main passion was teaching study skills. I only ever worked with first year undergraduates, and I loved supporting students through that transition to actually becoming independent learners, learning how to take notes, how to read, you know, huge amounts of material, how to absorb information, how to but also really practical stuff like how to manage their time, how to manage their schedules, how to write essays and prepare for exams. I think almost all the OU students I ever met were juggling other busy lives. You come to the OU, I think in those days they talked about mature students. Yeah. I don't think we use that term anymore, but most people, you know, they either had work or families or caring responsibilities, and were juggling. Study was something that had to be fitted into a very busy life. Unlike my own, you know, I had a very, very fortunate experience of going to university when I was 18. I had nothing else to do. But anyway, while I was working at the OU for about 14 years, I started to understand that motivation was incredibly important, and that if you were motivated, you could go on and do anything. You could study anything, you could succeed at anything. But if you lost your confidence and, you know, felt stuck and started to procrastinate, it got in the way, and it had nothing to do with how intelligent you were or how, you know, whatever your background. So I became really interested in this thing called procrastination. And I started to notice as well that amongst my colleagues, my teaching colleagues, we had huge amounts of reports to write and essays to mark and lots of paperwork and, you know, lots of admin to do. And procrastination was a really big challenge for teaching staff as well. So I realized students were like staying up all night to write these essays, and then we were staying up all night to mark them. And this great big elephant in the room that we're not talking about is, well, what does it mean when you get stuck, and how do you get over that hurdle, and how do you motivate yourself? And I was really interested in all those issues. So I decided to train as a life coach, not because I really wanted to be a life coach. I didn't really know much about life coaching, but I wanted to have the skills to motivate and help people in both in educational settings, and also I was starting to do kind of staff development, staff training, and helping my peers. So I trained as a life coach. This was back in 2007, when life coaching really wasn't that well known in the UK. And I started working mostly with students and with educators, with teachers and with administrators in educational settings, because that was the environment that I knew. And then I got more and more interested in the kinds of things that people procrastinate about. And at the time I was living in a block of flats with elderly neighbors who I had become friends with. And one of them I needed a guinea pig. I needed someone to practice with while I was doing my coaching training. And I said, is there anything that you're kind of stuck about? You know, have you got a decision or a practical issue or something I can help you with? And she said, I have a wardrobe of clothes that I need to sort out. Her husband had died a few years before and she hadn't been able to sort out these clothes. And she said, if you would just come and sit on the edge of my bed and chat to me while I do it. And I ended up coaching her through the process, asking her questions that enabled her, you know, that sort of prompted her to make decisions. And to cut long story short, she recommended me to a friend and another person, and I ended up setting up a decluttering and organizing business, which ran for about 10 years, very successfully. I was one of the first professional organisers in the UK. I also set up training. I joined the professional body, which is called APTO, the Association of Professional Declutterers and Organisers. I volunteered as a board member for 6 years and was very involved in the organising community, both in the UK and internationally as well. And even though I worked with many different types of clients, the one thing that kind of united everybody, this theme that went through all my work, was procrastination, was helping people who were stuck. At the same time, I was continuing to work at the OU, but I was kind of shrinking my work down. I took each academic year, I took on less and less coursework so that I could gradually reduce that. And then 4 years ago, I took voluntary redundancy and leapt full-time into self-employment, which I had been, you know, wanting to do for years. I've been self-employed for now 12 years, but just, you know, shifting the balance over the years. So for the last 4 years, I've been entirely self-employed. And that was when I took stock of what I really wanted to do. And I've kind of come full circle now, because I've gone back to working with students, working with educators, working with young entrepreneurs, young adults, and people who are stuck. And I realized that procrastination is really my passion. I love helping people discover what works for them. It's not about, you know, generic advice. It's about what really works for you. And so before COVID, I had already decided that I was going to reduce the amount of decluttering. And I've trained so many other colleagues now. I feel like there's a whole new generation, a whole new cohort of organisers and declutterers. And I wanted to focus more on the productivity work. So I was already, and also through the OU, I've done lots of work online. I knew already that was my next step. And then COVID came along. I had to stop going to people's homes anyway. So the last 18 months or so, all my work now is online, which I love. It means I can work globally. As you know, it's fantastic. And I'm focusing on the productivity work. Yeah. That's a rather long-winded explanation.
No, I think it's brilliant. It's great to get the background and understand, you know, like how you got to where you are, because most of our listeners will have had a journey which is not a straight trajectory. I'll say it for your teeth in, trajectory. You know, most people will go all over the place before they end up with the thing, whether that's deciding what services they offer. Yes. You know, because we've talked about that a lot, haven't we, Jo, where VAs in particular, they start off, they don't know what to offer, so they offer everything, and then gradually, like you've done, they whittle it down to the thing that makes their heart sing, which is lovely. So and of course our listeners are all mainly, apart from we do have some PAs and personal assistants and executive assistants who listen, but mainly they're virtual assistants. So everybody is a small business owner. So, and we all struggle with procrastination in some form. Maybe not every day, but there'll be days where it hits. So have you got any top tips that you could share with our audience about how to remotivate themselves?
Well, I think first of all, it's really helpful to know that it is a universal problem, because when you are sitting there alone in your, you know, in front of your screen or at your kitchen table, and you're feeling guilty and embarrassed and frustrated, you can feel like you're the only person in the world who has that problem, and feeling kind of stupid and angry at yourself as well. And I think it's really helpful to know that all the research shows it's a completely universal problem. It affects people every different culture, every age. The good news is that women are slightly less prone to procrastination than men, just slightly. And the other good news is that as we get older, there seems to be either more ability to deal with it, or, you know, either we kind of learn through life how to cope with it, or there's less likelihood that it happens. I think, you know, there is some good news to look forward to. But I think it's important to know that it's a habit as well. It's not a personality trait, because people sometimes label themselves. You know, it happens in all kinds of situations. You stick a label in your head and then you get stuck with that behavior, and you say, oh, well, I'm just a chronic procrastinator, or I'm a, you know, I'm no good at maths, or I'm no good at this, or I'm no good at that. And then you get stuck with in that rut. So you're not, what I always say to people, that there are a tiny proportion of people who are chronic procrastinators, and in that case it's often linked to more complex mental health conditions, you know. And so I'm not saying it's never, but for the most part it's a habit, and it's a habit we get into, and it's a habit that's difficult to shift. But recognizing that it's a habit is the first step to changing the behavior. I think so. I think that would be my first tip is to be kind to yourself. You know, let go. If I'm decluttering anything nowadays, it's negative feelings and self criticism and self judgment, and let go of all that stuff. Let go of all the, why am I in this situation? Why haven't I done it? Why am I here? You know, here we go again. Tax return comes around every year. I know exactly when I should be doing it. Or it's that, I don't know, that's paperwork especially. And I think, no, let go of that criticism. Just be kind to yourself and say, okay, what am I going to do about this, rather than why am I here? I think that would be my top tip.
Yeah, I think that's a really good one, because we can get so caught up in that, you know, woe is me feeling, for want of a better description. Does that resonate with you, Jo?
Yeah, totally. I mean, there's days when you kind of think, I know I've got to do that. And you can find, I mean, in my case, there'll be, let's say there's a report to write. I can find a laundry full of a laundry room full of sports kit that needs to go in the machine, or washing the dishes, and then all of a sudden there's this 100-mile dash at the last minute to just hit that deadline, and there's no obvious reason for it. You know, you've woken up and it just, I don't know, you've really got to, I was going to say talk to yourself, but that's not quite, you know, without kind of beating yourself up about it, but you've really got to get over this hump sometimes and think, what on earth am I doing just putting this laundry in when I should be, you know, and I think we've all done it, you know.
And actually what you're describing is a very productive response to procrastination. I stumble over the word myself sometimes. You know, sometimes people think that procrastination is lying on the sofa watching daytime TV, but actually you can be incredibly productive. You know, I clear out my desk and I clear out the fridge and catch up on all those little repairs around the house, all those things, when I don't want to be doing the things that I need to do. And I procrastinate myself. Everything I've learned is also through my own experience. I think it's something that we need to talk about more in a serious way, because it's something we joke about a lot. You know, comedians, there's lots of comedy skits out there about people procrastinating, and we kind of joke about it, but it is a serious issue, and it does get in the way, and it can cause a lot of stress. It's a cycle. It's part of a cycle of stress. You know, you put off doing the things that you need to do, and then you get more stressed, and then that adds to the stress, and then you feel stressed about what you're not doing, and it's breaking that cycle. But there are some practical, very simple practical things that you can do. For example, focusing on the very first step. So if you know, I mean, very often we put things off because they're overwhelming. You know, you've got a report to write, or you've got to read through a document that's 30 pages long, or you've got, I don't know, 150 emails in your inbox or something like that. And you just think, oh, this task is so, I'll just go have a cup of tea, or I'll just go walk the dog, or I'll just, you know, have that conversation with somebody, or go chat to my neighbor or whatever. Actually, instead of looking at the project as a whole, if you were to just focus on the very first step and say, the very first thing I need to do might be to sit at my desk and put my computer on, just literally get yourself in the place. When I work with students who have to write essays or have to revise for exams, the first step might literally be to get hold of the textbooks or the resources, or find out when the exams are scheduled and put the date in the diary, and just what is the very first thing. And if you can do that first step, you can then go on and do the next one or the next one, or you might take a break and then, but at least you've accomplished something. So I would say, don't think about, we're very accustomed to thinking about deadlines. And I'm sure, you know, VAs like organisers and coaches as well, we focus on the results. We want to get things done, and we've got deadlines in our diaries or in our heads. But actually focusing on the first step, sometimes I refer to it as lifelines. When are you going to give life to this project? Because a deadline can, first of all, it can seem like a long way off. Oh, I've got the whole week to do this, so I've got till 4 o'clock to do it. And also, but deadlines are also quite kind of scary.
Yeah.
You know, who wants to think about death? That's scary.
Never thought of that before. I love that.
So think about life. When are you going to give life to this project? And start. Just read the first paragraph. Read the, you know, you've got 15 social media posts. Just do the first one, or just make that first phone call and get over that hump. That can really help.
There's a very famous quote, and I've been trying to bring it to mind about just taking the first step.
By
you
Nietzsche.
know,
It's by Nietzsche. I can't remember
I just can't remember it, you know, but it's something about don't look for the whole, just start.
Yes, just do it. I mean, just do it.
As a famous organization says on their logo, just
yes, that's right. But just do the first step and actually clarify. That sounds very easy, and it sounds a little bit glib, say just do the first thing.
Yes.
What holds people up sometimes is not knowing what the first step is. So, for example, if you've got 5 clients, you know, clamoring for attention, or 3 emails that you need to respond, and it's very hard to know what to prioritize. Prioritizing is a key skill. It's one of the things I teach students how to do, how to manage. You know, if you're doing 9 GCSEs or 3 or 4 A levels, or you've got 3 essays or 5 exams to prepare for, how do you actually manage your time and ensure that you are tackling the most important things first, or the things that require the most energy or attention? And I think sometimes not knowing how to do something, we take things on and think, oh yeah, I can do that. And then you sit down and you think, actually, I'm not really sure how this software works, or I'm not sure exactly when and where, or maybe I need to go back to the client and clarify exactly what they wanted me to do, because the instructions weren't super clear. And I think knowing exactly, the clearer the task, the easier it is to then get on and do it. So saying to yourself, what's holding me up here? Is it because I'm not really sure how to do this? Is there a technical task that I perhaps need a little bit more instruction or clarity? Or maybe I'm missing a resource, or maybe I'm waiting for somebody else to do something. But there's a missing piece, and that can sometimes be the reason why we avoid doing the things. You can't locate a form that you've lost or something like that. And I think saying to yourself, what is it that I really need in order to take that first step can be quite helpful.
Yeah, that kind of eat that frog mentality.
Oh yes, absolutely. Yes.
I haven't read that book. I quote it, but I haven't read it.
Oh, it's wonderful. Brian Tacey, and he's got I think he's got a podcast too.
Yes.
The idea is that if you do the thing that you most dread first thing in the morning, you wake up in the morning and eat a live frog, your day can only get better.
I understand the premise of it. But I've just never got around to reading the book. So,
I'm a vegetarian and I struggle to find the equivalent.
I don't know what that would be. If you really hated tofu, maybe that would be it. Slimy something. I don't know. But it reminds me, talking about procrastination, I follow an American coach. He used to be an actor in the UK, and he's American. His name is Michael Neal. I don't know if you've come across him. And I was listening to one of his, he had a book out on audio, and I was listening to this audio, and he talked about a seminar he was giving, or mastermind he was doing. And somebody wanted to run they were running an event, and the event was aimed at procrastinators. And she said, but Michael, nobody's booking. How do I get them to book? So he said, the clue is in the name. They'll book at the last minute. They're procrastinators. They won't book a week ahead. They'll book on the last day. And I've always remembered that, because
I have that exact experience, because I run online workshops for business people, for students, for parents, for different groups. And I call the groups, I'll do it tomorrow. That's the name of my workshop.
Yeah.
I'll do it tomorrow. And I used to, when I first started doing training and workshops, I used to really worry, because 3 weeks before the event, I'd have like 1 or 2 bookings, and I think, should I cancel the room? This is when I did it in, live.
Yeah.
And now I've grown accustomed to not only people book at the last minute.
Yeah.
People literally message me when this training has started. So I keep my phone on, and I will, like 5 minutes in, I'll get a message saying, is it too late to join? And then I'll get emails the following day saying, I really wanted to come, but I didn't get around to booking. And so I always have the next one lined up. And I've now relaxed and recognized, and I often say in my workshops, that the people that most need to come are not the people who are here today.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so familiar.
That's so funny. That's so funny. Yeah, running open courses is I've only ever done it once with bums on seats in a physical room. It was just too much effort for me for what I do. I did it once, that's it. Although the 2 people that did come are still clients today, and this has been 12 years ago. So
yes,
so that's quite good. But right, so we've got tip number 1: take the first step, or even just identify the first.
Identify
step.
the very first step.
Yeah.
Be crystal clear about what that step is. Sometimes people say, oh, I need to get down to work. I've got to start my work. And that's too nebulous, and it's too general. So rather than saying, I need to answer the email from X, or I need to fill in the form to apply to this particular organization, or something like that. So be really specific about the goal that you want to accomplish. Focus on the very, very first step. Let go of all that self-criticism and why, the question why. And it's really interesting, because when I was an academic as a social scientist, I was always asking why. Why does this happen? Why do people behave in that way? Why is the world changing in this particular way? As a coach, I've stopped asking why, because why takes you into your head. It's a very analytical question, and why doesn't actually get you moving. You just ruminate, and then you end up thinking, why am I doing this, and why aren't I doing that? Actually, more useful to say, what do I need to do? When am I going to start it? Who do I need to ask for help? What help do I need? And how am I going to do it? Those questions are going to get you into action. So I'd focus on let go of the why, declutter the whys from your head as well. I think it's also helpful to break down the task into little steps, and make sure that you take breaks as well. Don't I think sometimes we leave things at the last minute, and then there's that sort of final push, and then you get overwhelmed and exhausted, and then of course you don't want to go through that all over again. So pacing yourself is really important, and being able to, I'm sure, for people who are self-employed or working from home and working online, it's so important to factor in self-care and to be able to manage the stress, and to get up and take breaks and get exercise and all of that. But I think it's about listening to the stories. I'm very into the idea that the stories we tell when we get stuck, we're stuck, not in a situation, but we're stuck in a story, because we're telling ourselves something. So it's listening to the stories. And one of the stories is, and I hear this all the time from students, but I sometimes hear it from professionals as well. I work well under pressure. I need the adrenaline, I need the rush. And actually,
do you? Yeah.
Do you really? And how well would you work without that? Have you actually experimented what it would be like to start at 10 o'clock in the morning instead of 10 o'clock at night? Or maybe that was true when you were you know, when you were 18 or when you were 23, but now that you're 10 years older, maybe that's not quite the case. And maybe it would be better if you had a little bit more, you know, you were more energetic and you weren't leaving things to the last minute. So that's a story that people listen to, the stories that you tell yourself.
I love that. So much of the way that we behave is based on the stories that we've always been telling ourselves. You know, attitudes to things, all sorts of things. That's really true. I read a book, or I listened to a book a couple of months ago by James Clear, Atomic Habits.
Yes, I'm a big fan of his.
It's a fantastic book. If listeners, if you get the option to either listen to him or read it, it's a really good book. And I think if you want to build a positive habit, then he's definitely got a roadmap. And I was fascinated by the fact that somebody could actually break it down like that and almost create a formula.
Yeah, no, very helpful. And I love the idea of one of the things he talks about is habit stacking, where you build one habit on top of another. So think about something that you do routinely. Think about something that you do, like brushing your teeth or taking the dog for a walk or having a morning coffee. And then if you're trying to change a habit, build a habit onto that. And so, for example, it's all about habits. Overcoming procrastination, as I said, it is a habit. We shift habits by replacing the habit that isn't useful with another one that is. So you don't eliminate the habit, you actually just change it. Instead of doing your paperwork late at night on a Sunday night when it's due for the Monday, you think about, well, what do I do during the week? That if I have a meeting on a Thursday afternoon, maybe I could start after the meeting. If I do something regularly after the meeting on Thursday afternoon, I'm going to start that particular project. And so you use the existing schedule, use the existing habits that you have, and that's really helpful. That's one of the ideas that I like the most.
Yeah, no, I like that one too. I don't put them into practice. I just like listening to them.
You know, Shelley, it's so much easier to teach this stuff than it is to do it yourself.
Totally.
I've been talking about procrastination for like 20, 30 years, and I still, if I had to write a chapter, I wrote a chapter recently for a book on procrastination, and I missed the deadline and I had to write this really grovelly email to the editor and say, I know this is, the irony isn't lost on me that I need to ask for a deadline. But, you know, that's life. And I think just, you know, we're busy people and life gets in the way of life. And I think it's distinguishing between, you know, missing a deadline for a chapter that didn't really matter, as opposed to, I don't know, missing a deadline for a tax return where there's going to be a huge financial penalty.
Yeah, and it's I don't know what I'm having a moment. My brain's gone blank. Joe, have you got anything to say? Fill in.
I'm just listening and nodding because all of this is like, check, been there, check, been there. And I love that Atomic Habits book as well. I've read it and I've reread it, and I found it really useful to kind of just get yourself into those new routines and so that you're no longer thinking about it at all. Do you know what I mean?
And yes, it's when our behavior becomes routine and we stop having to make decisions all the time. You know, if you put your keys in the same place when you come into the house, you don't have to spend hours looking for them.
That's it.
And for some people it can be, you know, they can take it to the next level. So having a meal plan, for example, not having to, if you've got a busy family life and you're trying to work, and especially if you've got, you know, special dietary needs, then it can be helpful to organize your shopping and your to put things in the diary, whether it's an electronic diary or a paper diary, but have as much of a schedule as possible. But I think for many people it's the balance between scheduling and spontaneity, because we don't want life to be too rigid and too regulated and regimented, and you know, it's not like school where you know what you're doing every minute of the day. We need, I think for many people who are self-employed, one of the reasons that attracted us was the flexibility and the freedom and not being told what to do all the time. But at the same time, you have to be your own boss. You have to actually put some of those guidelines, some of those schedules into place to make life easier, because it does simplify things when you don't have to make decisions all the time.
Totally. Well, we've been, can you believe it? We've been chatting for not very, it doesn't feel very long.
No, it
but
doesn't
actually it is, we've been going for nearly 40 minutes. I think we better start to wind down a little bit before that. I know that, Juliet, you must have quite a busy time coming up. Have you got much going on?
Yeah, this is a busy time of year because it's the beginning of the new academic year. So I'm running workshops for students and for parents on how to prepare, especially for GCSE exams. But I think it's also, it's a new season for some of us. It's a new year, and it's people starting to think about getting back to work and how that's going to affect their lifestyles. And I think procrastination is something, with all the good intentions that many people have at this time of year, and it's it is a new season. It's all very well having those intentions, but then actually putting them into practice and not being too tough on yourself when they don't work out, but knowing it is a universal thing. And listen to the stories, think about how you can shift the story and shift your behavior. I've written a book, if I can mention that, called What's Your Excuse for Not Being More Productive, where I outline all the little excuses that people make to themselves, not just to other people, but to, we make excuses to ourselves. And yes, so I'm going to be running workshops, I'm coaching, and I'm thinking about my next writing project as well. I haven't yet decided exactly what I'm going to be doing, but looking forward to that.
Oh, that would be good. Now, well, listeners, we will be sharing on the webpage that goes with this episode all Juliet's contact details. So if you are a sufferer of procrastination and you want a little bit of help, you'll know how to get in touch with Juliet, and links to her books and everything as well. And if you are a parent, as a lot of our listeners are, and you have GCSE or A-level or young student children, then do follow Juliet and help them get on better with when starting their educational journey, because I think that's a really important skill, to know how to learn how to learn, or how to approach it so that it's not as overwhelming. I still remember a student, a friend, one of my daughter's friends, had to do a dissertation, and she came round and we spent an hour just on my pet thing, styles in Word, showing her how to create a template for her dissertation, so she didn't have to spend hours procrastinating about doing it because she was worried about presenting it. And then I ran a course for a group of students on how to do that, which went quite well, and I never kind of followed it up really. Got busy with other stuff.
Oh, that's such a great idea. That's a wonderful idea.
Yeah. So, I've still got the outline somewhere, so we can have a chat maybe. But no, seriously, it really does help the students learn. And certainly if I was going to take any later life degree, because I can say that now, I definitely think, because I've never been to university or done any of those things, I think it would be something that would benefit me immensely if I could only find the time to learn something.
Well, it's funny because I think time management is a life skill. My background's in academia, but the reason that I love working with young adults in particular is that I think this sets you up for life. If you can learn how to manage your schedule, learn how to prioritize, learn how to deal with procrastination and perfectionism, which I didn't even talk about, but that's a big part of procrastination, is worrying about doing things perfectly. If you can learn to manage that, then you can go on and do anything. It's not just about passing exams.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you, Juliet, for a fabulous chat. And as I said, listeners, all Juliet's contact details will be on the webpage. And thank you for coming.
Thank you so much for hosting me and welcoming. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome back, listeners. Joe, wasn't that a fantastic interview there with Juliet Landau-Pope?
It was amazing. I think she certainly kind of triggered in my mind, that sounds like me. And yeah, I think we all have moments where we do that bit of navel gazing, or we feel a bit out of our comfort zone and whatever. And definitely definitely rang true for me. So
yeah. And what did you think about her suggestion? Do you think, you know, that will work? Would that work for you? The things that Juliet was suggesting.
For me, I mean, it very much what she said. It's just take that first step, you know, and for me, you know, if I'm trying to unpick a report, and it's usually these bigger, more in-depth sort of analytical reports I'm doing, it can feel a bit overwhelming because, you know, you've got 20 or 30 pages to write of detailed kind of assessment. So the first thing I do is just open a blank Word document and put a cover sheet, and I mean, that's a complete faff, but when you see that there, it's just like, oh yeah, I'm in it. And then the notes, and then it just comes and comes and comes, you know. But yes, I do admit I have been known to find the washing up and the laundry a little more attractive than a task, which is,
I think everybody can resonate with that. We all have days where we don't want to do what we feel we should be doing that day. And I think sometimes also there is that element of we are our own bosses. And we make our schedule, and I think this idea of not beating yourself up, it's about remembering that I make my schedule. So if I don't feel like doing this thing right now, then maybe I could reschedule it for myself to do this evening. Maybe I'll be in the mood then, and I'll go away and do something else in the meantime. So I think that, and I thought it was lovely. The other thing that I thought was really lovely that Juliet said, which also resonated with me, was what she's finding she's decluttering now are negative emotions. And I think based on all the stuff I've done in the last few months, that is a very, very, very big thing. You know, our negative emotions, our self-belief or our belief in whatever it is, can hold us back. You know, and sometimes we have these beliefs that we acquired as children, and we've never grown out of them and got to the adult version of that. So I think that's a very, very valuable thing. But I do know that you know, anybody that I know that has had kids do her you know, managing their time and studying program, they're really, really good. So I'm sure at some point your boys will get to that point.
We have options to start thinking about. So I may well go onto Juliet's website. She's got a great book on there. I was reading it yesterday when I was sort of trying to remember where I knew her from, and I may just be investing in a book. She's got one there, I forget what it's called now, sorry, but it's something like study skills or something like that, and it just looked, you know, like it might be useful in my home. I think you're gonna have to let them read it themselves rather than say you should do this. Just leave it subtly. I bet you if I leave it in the food cupboard, it'll be found.
That thing is at the food cupboard. Fabulous. Okay, listeners, do let us know how you react to that episode. I mentioned towards the end a course that I did for students a while back about setting up their templates for their dissertations so that they could just get on and write it without having to be bothered about how they then present it at the end. Because there's nothing worse than typing up this gazillion page, and they are very long documents, and then having to reformat it because something's changed. And nowadays the universities actually do give very strict guidelines about how the dissertation needs to be presented. My niece did chemical engineering, and she's a very bright girl. She's now a physics teacher, but she's enjoying being a physics teacher. She didn't enjoy working in corporate in the chemical engineering. She worked for a couple of global brands on the factory floor, and it wasn't her thing. But so she came round one day while she was feeling totally overwhelmed with everything she had to do, and she had a list. We know what fonts it should be, what size, headings, all of those things. We set it all up. And then she just breezed through it after that. So it's definitely being organised, which kind of is what it comes down to. And having a plan is the other thing. Definitely help. So listeners, Thank you very much for being with us again today, and we will see you next week.
You have been listening to Virtually Amazing, the podcast for virtual assistants with Shelley Fishel and Jo Brianti. We will be back with you again next week with yet another amazing episode. See you then.